Thank you everybody for coming, and welcome to first call-in, I believe, in 7 years, and my first officially chairing meeting in public. So, as I say, be gentle with me, and let's see how we go. So, first thing I'll talk through is just the usual fire evacuation procedures. I don't believe there's any fire alarm tests expected tonight, so if the fire alarm does sound, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located at the side of this room to exit through reception and meet in the War Memorial Park. This meeting is being webcast live on the internet and will be available to view on YouTube after the meeting. And please switch your phones off or turn to silent. So first of all, I've got a couple of apologies. Councillors Carruthers and Golding, who's on maternity leave. And are there any declarations of interest? Okay, thank you. Right, so this tonight we're doing this the Leisure Park Master Plan Adoption call-in. The contact officer is James Mercer, and this report addresses the issues raised in the call-in request form in relation to Cabinet's decision to adopt the Leisure Park Master Plan. So the first thing we're going to do is invite the signatories to explain the reasons for their request and what they feel should be reviewed. And just to let you know, you have got 25 minutes to share talk between you. So once the 25 minutes is up, we will then have to stop the clock. So who would like to go first? Councillor McCormick, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So hopefully we won't need the 25 minutes between the two of us. We can redistribute that to the other speakers if you see fit, Chair. I'll just set out our initial case. It was apparent when we had the initial proposals for the leisure plan that the plan lacked vision, to the extent that we had a motion before full council to that effect that was passed by full council. That then went into Cabinet last month, and the order of the agenda items on the paper suggested the decision to do nothing with the council motion or reject it had been made in advance, because adoption of the leisure plan was the next item on the agenda. The fact that the plan lacks vision, I think, has been further evidenced by the papers before you tonight, which show a very negative outlook instilled from the top down by 17 years of lacklustre administration. And I get the impression, the distinct impression, looking at these papers tonight, that there's a lot of talk in Basingstoke down, not maximising the opportunities that we have by virtue of our geography, with good transport connections to the Thames Valley and the South Coast, and a very large captive population within an hour's travel by road or rail. Specifically looking at the facilities that have not been included, but which aspirational voices were mentioned at full council and on other occasions, a 50-metre pool. So in the papers tonight it states that our residents should travel 17 miles down the M3 to a settlement less than half the size of Basingstoke to swim or train the 50-metre pool. Now, I don't think that's acceptable for our residents. I think that's underselling Basingstoke to our residents. And if we have aspirations to get a satellite university campus in Basingstoke, then we really need to think about facilities like a 50-metre pool, which a lot of universities have on their primary campuses and which their athletes will use. There's also mention about how much it would cost to maintain a 50-metre pool and how much it would cost to heat, etc., etc. We've got an ice rink next door. We can do things with heat exchangers where you're trying to keep water warm at one end of the park and you're trying to keep water below zero at another end of the park. All of these things are eminently technically feasible. It is simply a case of where the will, there's a way, and is there a will in this council to take a degree of calculated risk in putting forward a bolder vision for our leisure park. There's another example, the Snow Dome. Now, it cites Glasgow, a city I'm familiar with because my family come from there, and the Braehead area in particular. There is proven demand there. We've had Olympic skiers calling for the Braehead Centre to be reopened. None of that's mentioned in the report. Scotland also has the benefit of 5 real snow slopes within 2 hours' drive of Glasgow, and an entire ecosystem of aspirant Winter Olympians centred on snow and ice, including a very good male and female curling team that have won Olympic gold before now. So while Scotland is specific as a national centre of excellence for winter sport, the specifics regarding Glasgow and the fact that the business that took it over, the parent company, has been running a successful ice climbing centre at Kinlochleven for a number of years, but were basically handed something that they couldn't adapt to in time, and it's folded. Basically, that's a bit of a red herring when looking at where we are on the south coast. In the report, there are a number of sites listed, like Tamworth, Manchester, Hemel Hempstead, Milton Keynes. These are all north of the M4. These are all in parts of the country that have no greater population density than the Thames Valley and the south coast. And there is nothing south of the M4. And Swindon is cited as an example, and how Swindon have struggled to build it for years. Well, that's Swindon, that's not us. And actually, Swindon doesn't have as many people within close proximity to it. It's 80 miles from London, it's 30 miles from Bristol. We have within 20 miles a significant number of people, over 1 million people in the Thames Valley, and within 25 miles we've got 2 million people on the south coast. And that doesn't include the Sussex, Surrey and Hampshire conglomerate that starts round about Camberley and sort of extends down to Farnham and then in other directions towards London. So all these things would be in our catchment area within an hour's train ride of Basingstoke. So if we had the vision, if we built it, these people would come. Also, what hasn't been mentioned before, and I believe Councillor Konietzko may have something to say about this, a rock climbing wall. We were approached by someone who said there's no such facility now within easy reach of Basingstoke. There used to be one at the sports centre. I think that's been closed for a number of years. But this is just another example of aspirant sports and recreation facilities. And incidentally, if we want to have a university campus in Basingstoke, a rock climbing wall is a pretty good draw as well, because most universities have rock climbing or mountaineering clubs based in their primary campuses. So the secondary campus, they would have students coming down that would be members of these clubs that would use the facilities. And finally, there are other things that my colleague will mention about the energy efficiency side and other things, but transport, I mean, that's a glaring omission. Frankly, access is a bit of a nightmare at the moment. Parking's not clearly signed. It's difficult to park, even to go to the Costa Coffee place. We don't have any buses going there. We need a complete re-layout to make it more accommodating and easier for people to come in from outside of Basingstoke and find the parking and stay there a while and then go afterwards. And I don't see any evidence for that in the report, which is just basically taking what we've got and saying, oh, well, we can do something with it, but we'll just stick with what we've got if nothing else happens. And then they're trying to play two things at once here. One is to say the leisure park plan is capable of accommodating all these things and we'll just add them when we see fit. And then when we get a report that says, well, we can't do these harder things, these bigger things, basically we've got two conflicting things going on here. And I think it's incumbent for us as a council to consider the weight of evidence that's in front of us tonight and make the necessary recommendations with regard to where this decision goes. In any event, I think if it goes back to Cabinet, they need to have a serious exercise in reconsidering it. So that's all I'll have to say. I'll hand over to Chris.
Councillor Tomlin.
Right, thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Obviously, much of what Councillor McCormick said is we're totally aligned with. I mean, we're here because we agreed at full council this master plan was not good enough, and that's the reason. We actually had a council majority decision that we needed to do something about it, and now we find ourselves in a position where it's going to go ahead regardless, which is incredibly disappointing for the residents, not just for obviously councillors. the master plan, sadly, lacks ambition. We need to make something. We need to get something to attract people, to bring them into Basingstoke. It's such an important thing. We have a very good site and we have very good road access, but we need that. We're lacking novelty. We need something that will do that, will help bring people in. So we have a sort of mediocre facility provision. Yes, we have a new aquadrome. Maybe we need one because it's all falling apart, and it's well used. So yes, I take the point, that's good, but it seems the rest of the provision is pretty much the same as the big ticket items are still there, and nothing new. So we've talked about the snow dome. Yes, that is certainly an attraction. Someone said to me, there isn't a velodrome, none in the south other than at London for the Olympics. There's one at Calcott on the south coast. It's an outdoor one. But something like that would attract masses of people. I'm not saying it's the answer, but it's an important thing to either look at and see whether we can do something of such an impact. The other thing is, of course, where I'm disappointed is that we when talked about the energy efficiency and the fact that this potential the buildings we have there, we could start to actually power them from renewable energy. If we look at Milestones Museum, that's a great example. The number of solar panels put on there, it's a museum. It uses its power, strangely, in the day. Absolutely a sensible thing. And most of the time, I admit certain activities take place in the evenings at the other venues, but a lot of them are used heavily in the day. And it's a great opportunity, and it doesn't seem to have taken hold in any of these master plans. I think, should be looking also, and it's a thing about it, this multi-purpose unit that could provide a football. I'm not going to use the word stadium because everybody seems to think that's going to be some massive building. It's some facility that can put back what didn't happen for the Basingstoke football team and all the training and everything that goes with that community that didn't happen when we had the Bazaron and planning and etc. site put through. So I think we need to look at that. So I will not go on anymore, other than I think with others, I think are semi in agreement that we ought to be looking at helping, not just criticising, but helping this task and finish panel. That's a thought, that we could build something to take and help the officers and the portfolio holder, etc. Try and get something that will make Basingstoke even more proud and can make a much better commercial offer. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I'm now going to invite Mr. Peach to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try and squeeze this into the 2 minutes. Essentially, we need a new leisure pursuit in Basingstoke that's not currently provided, and indeed something that no other southern borough has. With the opportunity that regeneration offers and Basingstoke's location, we could deliver a leisure facility that offers a choice of activities, making Basingstoke the leisure destination of choice. People of Basingstoke and the neighbouring towns have told me that they want an indoor skate park, as one example. The nearest indoor parks to us are at least a 2-hour drive away, and whilst Basingstoke has a heritage of professional riders and skaters and a growing number of new participants, there is no indoor park where it is safe for users to ride, they can stay dry and warm in the British weather, and they can practice all year. One of the biggest issues we face is financing private units with incredibly high rents in the south. Investing into building a park only to find a rent increase shuts us down. At Deeside in Flintshire, the local authority took away that risk, and they now run a skate park as part of their primary offer in their leisure centre. It's a huge success, and you can imagine what that could be in Basingstoke with the links that we've got here in our roads and rail. As a newly formed non-profit and soon to be hopefully charity, the Stoke Park has been talking to local community, and so far a recent petition has gained 660 signatures in only 2 weeks, and we've also raised nearly £700. We believe this is the beginnings of supporting the demand that there is for these types of facilities. BMX and skateboard have both recently joined the Olympic sports, and Britain has already achieved gold and silver and bronze medals in both disciplines across men and women in Japan. Since that inspirational moment, we've seen a huge influx of young people enter the sport, and their parents following too. The master plan shows immense space and opportunity, and with the council support, such activities would surely add to Basingstoke's leisure offer. A survey we carried out with over nearly 40% of users said that they would travel in excess of 2 hours to
Just wrap up a bit, okay?
Oh, you up already?
You are, I'm afraid.
My goodness, that was quick. Basically, I'd just like to wrap up. I can't finish it all, but there's a huge growing demand for these types of sports. You know, it's no longer that traditional anymore. The Olympics has really driven so many people into the skate and BMX, and probably soon to be scooter as well. I truly believe it will put Basingstoke on the map, and people will travel to Basingstoke to come and see this.
Thank you, Mr. Peach, for your very impassioned speech there.
Thank you.
Right, I'll now invite the visiting councillors, other than the signatories, to address the committee. So, Councillor Conesco. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. When I read through the papers for this evening's meeting, I kept hearing the same message repeated time and time again by the Cabinet. There's no other realistic alternative to the current plans. The 50-metre swimming pool will be too costly to build and to maintain. Building a sports stadium is too big an investment, and anyway, it's the responsibility of the private sector. If commercial operators don't want to run the Snowdome, then it doesn't make commercial sense for us to have one. In fact, let's just stick with a slightly newer version of what we've already got. It won't cost us too much. It's better than doing nothing. That, to me, is completely the wrong attitude. It goes against the motion that we unanimously agreed at the full council meeting just a couple of months ago. It ignores the wishes of our local residents, some of whom are here this evening, who want us to be more creative and build a leisure park that meets our needs both now and in the future. And it's also, in my view, based on the misunderstanding of what the role of the council actually is. As a local authority, we're not beholden to shareholders demanding that we maximise our financial returns. We're accountable to our residents, who expect us to spend their money in the best interest of the borough as a whole. And these are two very different metrics, and they'll lead to two very different investment decisions. A commercial landowner will look only very narrowly and very selfishly at the financial benefits that they, and only they, will reap from a particular project. As a council, we need to be more broadly based and more holistic, and we need to look at all of the social and economic benefits for the borough as a whole. And our business case needs to take into account all of the benefits of our investment. And here are just a few of the benefits that we need to consider when we're developing the Leisure Park Master Plan, in my view. The benefits to our borough's economy as a whole of attracting more visitors, because they'll come to the leisure park, but hopefully they'll also spend their money in the town centre and beyond. The health and well-being benefits to local residents from pursuing exciting sporting and leisure opportunities. The opportunities that the facilities can provide, particularly to our young people, to do something rewarding in their spare time. Activities like climbing and indoor skateboarding. As a younger councillor, I learnt to climb indoors. I had to go to Reading to do that, and it was pretty much a 90-minute round trip, so I gave up after a while. If there had been something locally, I might have been able to continue with that. And we've already heard, in terms of the skateboarding, a very persuasive argument from Stephen as to why Basingstoke would benefit from an indoor skate facility. There's also the psychological benefits of living in a borough, of which we can all be proud. And of course, as already mentioned, the environmental benefits of having all of this on our doorstep rather than needing to drive to Milton Keynes or to Portsmouth. So many benefits, but I've not seen any analysis by the Cabinet to try to quantify them and factor them into the decision-making process. The Cabinet has tried to justify its decision by suggesting it has no option but to stick with its current lacklustre plans. Nothing else is viable, but that's not true. There are other better options if we're prepared to look at the benefits in their entirety. And let me be clear, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that we ignore financial sustainability or that we recklessly spend public money. In fact, I want us to do the opposite. I like to see how much more a 50-metre pool costs to build and run compared to one half the size. That way, everyone here can judge for themselves if the broader benefits outweigh the extra financial investment. I'd like us to undertake a proper feasibility study into a multi-use stadium rather than just dismissing the idea outright at the start of the process. I believe that we need to change our mindset, stop dismissing ideas that we don't like, and start acting as representatives of the people of this borough. So let's stop coming up with reasons why we can't do things and focus our efforts instead on finding solutions so that we can deliver a bolder and more ambitious leisure park for our borough. Let's go back to the drawing board with this master plan and put our local people first, as we all agreed just a couple of months ago. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Attigan.
Thank you, Chairman. Committee. I wanted to be here tonight because it was a unanimous vote of the council to review the master plan, and I think it is right that a Conservative rocks up as we voted to do the same. I think it is important that we are more ambitious, that we lay within the document how we can improve, what scrutiny will come through the process, and if we sign contracts, of which we've not been particularly great in the past, that we get to review them even in closed session. I think it is important that we as a council, we don't have, as a Conservative administration, we don't have a majority, and therefore we have to listen to the views of every councillor, whether they're independent on their own or from any of the parties. I think it is vital that we do that. It is important, let's say, that we start with what we agree. We want a better leisure facilities for our residents. How we get there is the subject for debate, and I think it is important that we have that debate. I think we have it more often, we'll get a better solution over time. And I'd like to quote Councillor Isaac, not because it's to embarrass him, but just to emphasise one of the things that has worked against us. This is his quote: "These are significant early stage proposals which will transform our leisure park and deserve to be considered and looked at in more detail. They amount to an ambitious, exciting opportunity for the borough, and that we owe our residents and future generations to consider the bold, innovative action to keep the leisure park flourishing. A leisure scheme on this scale would really put the borough on the map, providing new facilities that the people who live here deserve." Unfortunately, because of the way we've moved, myself included, that quote's from December 2017. It is really frightening how long this has taken. We need to get on with it, and we need to get us all looking in the right direction to provide the right facilities. That leisure park is decaying. As somebody who uses it, perhaps more than most of the councillors around this table, it is a disgrace to see how dirty that aquadrome was today. It is not right that after months of repairs, one of the flumes is still out. I questioned it in December, it's still out here in the middle of February. We need to do a lot more often. We also need to get a vision of things that will incite people and excite people. Why is there nothing in the master plan that talks about an MRT, even if it's just from the leisure park to the stations, out to Basingstoke and to Farnham House? You know, if we could have something small there and build upon it, I think people would realise the level of ambition we've got. And of course, if you're getting people into the stations, they can jump on something and go to our leisure park and use it. We need people to use it, we need people to embrace it, and we need it to be as exciting and innovative as possible. I hope that we can, all of us, achieve quite a lot of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Minus-Bound.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just conscious it's the first time, or second time I've spoken at a public meeting. I just wanted to make sure we're all aware it's Minas-Bound.
My
with Spanish
apologies.
pronunciation.
Minas.
Forgiven, Chair. It took me a while to get used to it too. So, whilst we need to adopt the master plan to progress delivery, it needs to be flexible enough to respond to all the opportunities that are coming forward, to select the best mix of new attractions in the market to complement the existing ones. Our leisure park, as we all know, is well used, well loved, a place for the people of this borough and also for visitors to relax and have fun, a word that we don't very often mention in this local authority. But it is tired and it needs reworking and an injection of new energy, new attractions and something to grab visitors' attention from miles around. I think something that we all agree on. All of these things are being developed now. What this document is a master plan that is not fixed, a master plan that will change as it is implemented. The master plan builds on the current experience of residents and creates many more opportunities, both free and paid for, to have fun and become a leisure park for all. We should also be aware that waiting to implement this framework that is not fixed only means a delay in getting on with the job of improving the park. I fundamentally believe that that is not what residents want from this council. They want us to get on with delivering the new leisure park. As Councillor Rattigan has said, the leisure park and its regeneration has been in the pipeline, shall we call it, for some time. We need to ensure that the park is a go-to regional draw, which is what we all want. It now needs modernising, it needs the latest leisure activities and attractions, it needs to provide that broader economic value as well as the socio stuff. Any delay only creates an opportunity for any one of those interested parties to go and invest elsewhere. I absolutely agree with Mr. Peach. As the ward councillor that changed our strategy on and our implementation of skate parks from a metal frame one to a concrete one with the Rookstown skate park. In 2015 in my election, it was absolutely something that I was talking about as far as having an indoor skate park, something that would be well used. This master plan does not exclude that. A climbing wall doesn't exclude that either. We are yet to say what needs to be inside our aquadrome. That may well be an indoor skate park. That may well be a climbing wall. These are all opportunities that can be implemented and, in my view, should be implemented as part of the implementation of the framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I now invite Councillor Isaac as a cabinet member to make a comment.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, committee, everyone. Would it be helpful if I introduce some of the officers who may be new to the committee and also our consultant? Yeah. So to my left, I have Keith Harvey, who is the recently appointed Interim Director of Regeneration. To my right, I've got James Mercer, who's the Development Manager, who's been working on the Leisure Park project for some time now. And then further to my right, I've got Duncan Wood-Allen of SLC, who are leisure consultants. And I would urge the committee to make full use of the vast knowledge that Duncan has got on that marketplace. So if I could start with some opening remarks. As portfolio holder responsible for bringing forward the regeneration of our leisure park, I am of course happy to explain the approach that we've been taking with support from officers and technical advisors and to attempt to answer any questions. I have to say that I'm surprised that a call-in itself a rare event for this council, has been necessary, but I respect the strong sense from councillors that we must be really ambitious as a council and make the most of this once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver a new leisure park that will put Basingstoke centre stage in the UK as a regional leisure destination. Let me assure committee that there is no lack of ambition for spectacular new leisure in this borough on the part of myself or this administration. Quite the reverse.
as will become evident to councillors when, as publicly indicated, we publish leisure proposals which at present must remain confidential ahead of the next Cabinet meeting on March the 7th, and these, I believe, will be viewed as hugely positive and exciting for this borough and its residents. High ambition is something, then, that is shared by all councillors, so I suspect that one of the difficulties has been that the master plan approved by Cabinet is more of a general framework of principles, a guiding tool, if you like, than a detailed description of what leisure attractions will go where and which leisure brand will be selected. All that is apart from the planned new aquadrome, which is specifically located. In terms of level of ambition, we should not forget the scale of investment the administration has committed to here, probably in the region of 30 to 40 million pounds. And looking at the social and economic and health and well-being benefits of a new aquadrome, not just the bottom line. In fact, not the bottom line. There can be few, if any, councils able to fund such a huge investment in its residents' health and well-being out of its own resources at this difficult time economically. I understand the frustrations that absence of detail can cause, but realistically, councillors, we are not yet at the point of naming names, but the framework is a necessary stage to giving interested leisure operators confidence in us as partners that a clear outline is provided on how we intend to approach selection criteria, mix and the development process, including in the context of a better layout of public space, car parking and access for pedestrians, cyclists and vehicles, and our policies on climate, not least opportunities for net zero and energy generation. But the point is, it's early days in the process of evaluation. But that's our objective. Since the setback of the withdrawal of New River in 2021, and without a 2-year legal challenge and then COVID, we could be celebrating progress on a new investment in a leisure park to the tune of 300 million. But that's history. But we've cracked on with a new plan for the leisure park from early 2022, starting with consulting residents on their preferences, which are reflected throughout the master plan. We don't want any hold-ups now. Instead, we want to get on with selecting the best mix of leisure operators to suit all ages of residents and ones that will complement both existing attractions on the park. And it's very important that we look after those operators who are already on the park, and also equally important to complement what is offered in our town centre. Consulting, of course, on this process throughout with councillors and in particular EPH and the MAP will be an important part of delivering our shared vision. Another of the concerns raised in the call-in seems to be around the perceived piecemeal nature of the master plan approach. In reality, it is right that we avoid the risks again of putting all our eggs in one basket with a single developer, such as New River. By adopting a plot-by-plot approach, the master plan ensures we retain much greater council control and we can build direct relationships with leisure businesses. I thought that's what councillors wanted. Equally, it is right that instead of whole-scale redevelopment, we work with existing operators on the leisure park, encouraging them to make new investment, all of which is consistent with our climate change objectives of improving the existing fabric of buildings rather than always new build. I do understand the calls from certain councillors for a new stadium for the Basingstoke Town Football Club, or a multi-user stadium, or even a snow dome. But unless they're saying that they think these are must-haves and should be funded whatever the cost by this council, I believe strongly that we should adhere to ensuring operators can prove strong, viable business cases, minimising the risk to council ratepayers of picking up the cost
of a long-term liability. I don't think councils are best placed to decide on which leisure attraction to develop, or for that matter to run and operate, with the exception of the Aquadrome, which is an important public facility and pre-COVID was visited nearly 1 million times a year by our residents and visitors to the borough. New leisure should be market-led by businesses that know how to run them, but with this council deciding on the best mix of exciting attractions. As the leader confirmed at Cabinet, nothing has been decided and nothing ruled in or out other than a new aquadrome by this master plan. But thoroughly worked out business cases need to be provided to us as a responsible council, whether this be for a multi-use stadium, a stadium for BTFC or a snowdome. Officers have investigated all these possibilities in response to the motion passed by full council in December, and so far no businesses have come forward. Extensive marketing continues nationally and internationally by our property advisors, and this is ongoing. We want to attract the best that the leisure market has to offer, and what is clear to me is that many of the best and most exciting brands nationally and internationally want to come to our leisure park. I'm pleased to say that I've had contact, I think, from Councillor Kate Tuck in regard to the wall climbing, and we are investigating that. Officers are looking at that and had meetings with the party concerned, and also Stephen Peach contacted me previously, and again, officers have been asked to look into the skate park and BMX opportunities. So we are. There's no closed books on this. We want to bring these things to Basingstoke. Swindon Council's experience of promoting a snow centre is a lesson in the dangers that exist. Announced in 2012, approved by Council in 2018, there are no signs it will happen. The developers are reported to be unable to fund it, and meanwhile the land stands idle, with the council unable to take back control, and the nearby Oasis Leisure Centre, also owned by the developer, including a swimming pool, remaining closed since COVID in 2020. In order to attempt to address Council's concerns as fully as possible, I have asked senior officers here this evening to speak to other important issues raised previously, ones you may wish tonight to investigate further, such as car parking, traffic, climate change, the relationship with the town centre, and commercial sensitivities around disclosing brand identities. If I may, I will invite the officers to speak as I bring my remarks to a conclusion. So whatever this committee recommends tonight, for my part, I confirm a desire to work collaboratively with users, operators, councillors, EPH and the MAP, and as openly and as commercial confidences permit in achieving our common objectives. However, residents, I think, will want to be reassured that we will move forward without delay and that the leisure attractions we select for them can be realistically delivered and are likely to flourish and be self-supporting in the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, and as you said, it's now invite Keith Harley and James Mercer to advise the committee on the background and context of the decision and its importance to achieving service priorities.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to add some context. So the master plan is a document, it's a conceptual layout at this stage to guide future growth and development for the leisure park. It's not a master plan or a document that is set in stone. It will evolve and it will move as different developers and organisations and leisure operators approach the council, but it also gives the council the control to meet its aspirations for the leisure park. It's really a first stage in preparing a delivery strategy. So the next stage is is when we get into the detailed work around biodiversity, travel plans, transport assessments, design codes, the sustainability agenda, parking management strategy, and all these issues as they evolve with the master plan would be reported back to EPH committee. So the master plan is really an important tool to demonstrate to investors, developers and leisure operators that the council has a commitment and intent to deliver the project, but at this stage it would be too early, and it wouldn't be appropriate to be prescriptive on the design because of the issues which we've set out in relation to potential leisure operators. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And is it James Mercer? Did you want to have anything to say?
Thank you. I don't think I have too much to add to what's already been said by Councillor Isaac and Keith Harley. But we do have obviously further information to provide in terms of the specific references to 50-metre pool, leisure, snow dome, and the sort of multi-use arena or stadium that could be provided. And in sort of terms to those uses, I'd probably bring in Duncan, who is best placed to sort of be able to cover off those technical issues.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. I thought it might be useful just to address some of the key issues and opportunities around the three key elements that were contained within the call-in, namely the 50-metre pool, the snow dome, and the multi-use stadium. I'll start with the 50-metre pool, if I may. A number of independent studies as part of the Council's planning remit have been undertaken since 2015 to explore the needs for water space within Basingstoke and Deane. They've been compliant with national planning guidance and Sport England's guidance and general industry best practice, and we've independently reviewed all of those reports to test their robustness and the recommendations contained within. What they're designed to do is support the council in identifying how it can plan ahead for particularly water needs of residents in the future, taking account of demographic shift, population change, etc., but also taking into account the age and the condition of the swimming facilities that are available to residents. And there've been a number of very thorough reports undertaken, like I said, in 2015, where the recommendation was that despite expected population growth, there should be no reduction in water space within Basingstoke, and looking ahead to the medium term, some consideration to increase water space by a small degree. Clearly, the aquadrome is getting to the end of its operational life. I wandered round before this meeting. I was very curious to have a good look myself, and you know, inside, I think the team are doing a really great job keeping it going. But I think, you know, there's a general understanding that it's getting to the end of its operational life, and it's much loved, and we really can see that. The more recent leisure and recreation needs assessment again reinforced the findings of the 2015 report to say, look, you can't afford to lose any water space, and there is a small need for some additional water space. So you're actually quite fortunate, because an awful lot of councils in the country don't have that balance of water. So that's been down to good strategic planning in the past. The council then undertook another study in 2022 to double check those recommendations in terms of what the water needs would be for a growing population up to 2040, and they used a model called the Sport England Facilities Planning Tool, and that accurately assesses, taking account of population growth, what water needs are required. And the report that came out of there and the refresh of that leisure needs assessment reinforced the fact that you've got good balance of water space. In all of those reports, the question of a 50-metre pool was raised, And the key question within all of those reports was, does Basingstoke need a 50-metre pool? Will that meet need? And unfortunately, the findings from all of those reports and a recent needs assessment report by the Council's previous leisure consultants in 2021, FMG, concluded that there was no evidence of need for a 50-metre pool. You know, if residents want to compete at a performance level, they've got access to 4 50-metre pools within a half-an-hour drive. My consultancy works across the UK at the moment. Most of my clients with 50-metre pools, quite frankly, wanted to close them. That is the reality of the situation at the moment. Looking ahead, 50-metre pools, we believe, are going to need to be nationally funded by government to support Olympic ambition and performance ambition, and that the driver for swimming, ultimately because of the additional costs of providing swimming, needs to be focused on children's water safety, recreational swimming and leisure swimming for local residents. And from our perspective, a 50-metre pool doesn't really fit the bill that much. It's quite an intimidating space for a lot of people and can put off an awful amount of recreational swimmers. One other point I need to make is that the water temperature that you would need to operate the 50-metre pool at would not attract older users and would not attract younger children and families because the water would be too cold. So the emerging recommendations that came out of multiple reports that the Council has commissioned, including the most recent needs assessment and our independent evaluation, has concluded that a 25-metre pool with either 6 or 8 lanes, plus a large learner pool, plus some degree of leisure water, is absolutely the right mix for Basingstoke and will work commercially and deliver maximum social and economic added value. So even though I think I understand the point that was made about attracting the university in, and I understand particularly sport provision for universities is a key unique selling point. I absolutely get that. However, who's going to pay for that? You know, the capital costs and the revenue costs of running a 50-metre pool are highly prohibitive, particularly right now with the Ukraine war spiking energy prices, and there's no guarantee that they're ever going to return back to pre-war levels. And for us, that's a huge financial risk that would need to be taken into account if the council did want to press ahead and build a 50-metre pool. My concern is it would actually water down demand for the 4 pools that are, quite frankly, hanging on in there right now, and in effect maybe not achieve the ambition for something really attractive and really bold for Basingstoke. If I can move on to the Snowdome, we've been chatting to the team that have been advising the council around looking to explore both nationally and internationally to attract the very best leisure operators and very best investors to Basingstoke based on the ambitious leisure master plan. We've gone through the methodology that the JLL and their specialist advisor leisure division have undertaken to, in effect, look for all of the opportunities that are out there and all of the potential partners that might be attracted to come to Basingstoke, and they've done an incredibly thorough job. They actually specifically went out and spoke to the UK's largest investor and developer of snowdomes historically to ask them the direct question, would you like to come and build a snowdome in Basingstoke? The response was, we're not investing in snowdomes anymore. They are just not economically feasible. The financial risk is highly prohibitive from that developer's experience and perspective. They are world experts in this area. We've cited snowdomes closing across Europe, even in Switzerland at the moment. It's a really difficult thing to make work, and obviously there are some pretty significant environmental consequences that may frustrate your ambition around net zero as well. I think our view is that the attraction factor of something like a snowdome shouldn't be lost, but a snowdome from our perspective and our professional perspective isn't a very good idea. I was consulted on the Snow Dome in Swindon 20 years ago, and my advice to them then, it wasn't a very good idea. And it's, I'm afraid history's proved it right again and again. It's a very difficult thing to deliver. If I could move on to the multi-use sports stadium, we've been working with some specialist advisors called IPW, who have got direct experience of supporting towns in developing their stadiums. They advise on ice rinks, they advise on multi arenas, and so are very well placed to explore the potential of a multi-use stadium or arena within Basingstoke. We were very impressed with the fact that the council had actually gone away and done quite a lot of work to explore the footprint of different size multi-use stadiums, and also the capital cost of building them based on today's build prices. I think they've been included within the report, and they're quite significant. We then looked at, obviously, the football club's position within the league structure, its current performance around the number of fans it's attracting to its gates, and obviously it's doing quite well in the league, I hear, at the moment, which is absolutely fantastic. But we need to be realistic here. That I think within the call-in, we're looking at a fairly significant arena that could attract, for example, outdoor concerts. Our professional experts have said that they think that a 5,000-seater stadium, which would be an outdoor stadium, would probably only attract about 2 concerts a year, because it's competing with all of the festivals that are happening at the time, and promoters, quite frankly, will want to go elsewhere. They'll want to go to Southampton or Reading, where you've got a greater capacity, or they'll want to go into an indoor arena with, again, similar or greater capacity. So our experts have told us that there's no real market for a venue that could provide a football club with a pitch, and then you board it over, and then you'd hold concerts. It just would not stack up. It would need huge amounts of public subsidy in order to work, and that wouldn't necessarily guarantee anybody would want to put on a show there. The risk would sit with the football club. It would probably, I fear, make the football club insolvent. There are a tale of multiple issues around joint ventures between councils and football clubs and rugby clubs across the country. Even the London Stadium, the Olympic Stadium, that's costing the public £8 million a year to run, even with a Premier League football club in situ. Those of you that follow the rugby might have heard of the issue that Wasps have had at Coventry in the Ricoh Stadium, or formerly the Ricoh Stadium. That's been a consistent failure and has led to significant public losses. In Huddersfield, the council has been left with a very difficult situation to deal with. So what we're saying, it's not impossible you could make something work, but I think, as the point was made, if somebody could bring a business case that could stack up around the amount of capital that needs to go into build a facility like this, taking account of the footprint it would take over, and it would be a significant footprint, then it would be considered fully within the master plan. But it is of no surprise to us that nobody has proposed a multi-use football stadium, because, quite frankly, we don't think there's a market for one. In terms of meeting the needs of the football club as it progresses hopefully through the leagues, I think there are much smaller scale solutions that will protect the sustainability of the football club, so it's spending its money on new players rather on a facility that's out of scale with its ambition.
Thank you. Right, so now I'll invite the committee to ask questions to the Cabinet Member and officers. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, mine will be a straightforward question as normal. Why have we got into this position? And it's to Councillor Isaac. It seems strange to me that everybody's saying the things they want, the things they don't want, and everything else. You've had the professionals in, but you haven't brought any councillors along with you. And I just wonder what is going wrong, in as much as this hasn't suddenly come up. We've had the New River or whatever it was called last time, very controversial, if you remember rightly at the time. Now, and this seems to be this divide now that we as councillors, and I say we because I'm a backbencher, same as the rest of them, we seem to be left out in the loop until you suddenly decide at some stage you're going to let us in on the secrets. We don't have any papers. Some are sensitive, and I do accept that we can't have everything. But we don't seem to be going forward. We don't seem to be saying, what is the problem? I might say I want something ridiculous like a mountain built there and we'll have rock climbing. You know, that's me as an individual. Other individuals in our council will say something else. And we've got to assess what we need and across the borough, where are we falling down? Because I don't honestly believe it's just about the leisure centre before the leisure park. I think some of the stuff that's happening in our borough for sports has been gradually troubling. Why, I don't know. We don't get that involved unless you're involved with the clubs. There's lots of things coming up that are, you know, gymnastics, for instance, they want to expand, they can't, they haven't got the facilities for this and that. These are the things that people are worried about, and that comes back to us as councillors. And also, you know, you talk about the ice hockey. I was on CEP, well, God knows how many years we were talking about that. There was a lot of work done by the council, but we haven't actually progressed it any further. Yes, we've had COVID and what have you since then, which didn't help. But we don't seem to be all singing off the same page, trying to get something forward. My view is perhaps we needed a task and finish group. It wouldn't be from Scrutiny, because I normally chair that. But it should be CEP, so we actually take ownership of what we want. So it's actually get it into a committee to say what we actually want as a council and as councillors. It goes back to the cabinet, and the cabinet then can do, you know, if it's a load of nonsense, tell us it's a load of nonsense, it's not feasible. But that's what councillors want, I think, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think you raise an interesting point, and it's there's a problem of communication here, isn't there? I think there's also an issue that because Basingstoke being an ambitious place with a council that's got strong finances, a lot of councillors understandably want the best for residents, and I'm on side with that entirely. But sometimes their aspirations may be unrealistic, and I think what we heard tonight from Duncan was pretty compelling about, you know, what the real world is like for snow domes, what the real world is like for multi-use sports stadiums and for 50-metre pools. Sometimes I get the feeling that doesn't matter how many times one actually says this, it just the message isn't received and doesn't want to be heard. Now we've got a map, a members advisory panel, and a lot of the consultants have been participating in that. But again, I don't get a sense that members on the map are particularly recognise that we do need to work within the real world in what we deliver here, and the real world, I would say, is going to be incredibly exciting for us. It may not be a snow dome, it may not be a multi-use sports stadium. It might not be a 50-metre pool. We're all looking at those. We haven't put those to one side, but there will be other things that will be coming forward. But again, when you're having direct discussions with some of the leading leisure operators, they're very, very concerned that where they're going, i.e. they're heading for Basingstoke, isn't something that's transmitted into their marketplace. And so we do have to respect that. And I want to share as soon as possible some of the names that we're talking to and we have identified when we're going through that process. And that's why I said that we'll be making a major announcement if all goes to plan at Cabinet in next month.
and I think that will demonstrate beyond reasonable doubt just how ambitious we are as a council and an administration.
It sounds really good, but the truth is, and I'm not on the map, never have been, but some of my colleagues have, and the feedback I've got, they basically feel that they've been ignored most of it. Now, I've been, I'll just finish, been around quite a while. You know, I wonder what's gone wrong. I said it earlier. We built the Anvil years ago. Big debate over that. I was on the side that wanted a 24, whatever seater. We ended up with a 14. But we actually got there in the end because we actually talked about it. And what's happening now, we don't talk about it. It goes to the cabinet. It's the system we got now, whether we like it, whether we don't. But we need more communications, because all you're gonna get is my idea, people down the end's idea, because we haven't been actually talking about it publicly, and the public wants to know. You know, we got an ice rink, as I say, that was really big public news. As you know, you went through hell for it, if I remember rightly, through some of the questionings that was thrown at you at the time. But that sort of died its death. People out there are feeling, well, no, they do what they're going to do. What is the point? We as councillors think, well, no, we're not going to let you get away with it. You know, get your act together. I'll tell you straight, you're not doing something right somewhere in that cabinet. You're not inclusive enough with the councillors to get people on board. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think we're not always going to agree, are we? But there is a lot in private with the map. There's a lot of agreement. It's when things become public, it's perhaps there's less. But I think tonight has been very useful in sort of bringing out some of the issues that we've got as decision makers to take on board when we decide on things. But you know, can we not forget that this is a council, this is an administration that has decided it wants to spend between 30 and 40 million pounds on a new aquadrome for the residents, and a lot of the leisure operators that are talking to us currently about Leisure Park, we want to get on with it and bring forward their names and share those with councillors. And I think if we have a positive approach to this, I know it's frustrating. I understand we lost 3 years, didn't we, with New River? And okay, if we could rewrite history, one would do, but it happened. We had a legal challenge, and then we had COVID. And these things happen. You know, we're all sort of people of the world. These things happen, but we are moving as quickly forward as possible, and I'm confident that the progress we will make over the ensuing months will give you the sort of reassurance that we mean business.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting, isn't it, that it takes this kind of conversation around this table to get to these sorts of things coming out. And that's perhaps a reflection that we need to have. Why has it taken a call in to a scrutiny meeting to get this kind of conversation that might well have taken place in the map, but those map members feel frustrated about? So there is an issue here of process. There's an issue here of how this authority goes about its business. So members do feel inclusive. You don't feel frustrated as a cabinet member. We don't feel frustrated as backbenchers. So that needs to be taken away. It needs to be taken away and thought through, doesn't it? Yeah, quite so. I think there's a number of things that fall out, and I'd just like to explore them with you if I could. It's interesting how the language, it's against semantics, but semantics are important because you're trying to convey things and communicate things not just to us, but to residents. So when is a master plan a framework? When is the framework a master plan? And when is the definition of the two in terms of being clear about actually what you mean? Because either things are open to suggestions of a 50-metre pool and other things that people want, or they're not, because you've got operators that are already negotiating with you to take plots, and it's a plot-by-plot process. So is it a master plan that has the plots in place that relates to those particular operators? Who knows? I don't know the answer to that. If it isn't, where do those other things fit into the equation? Where does the door get closed? Does the positioning of the aquadrome on that particular plot rule out other things? Where does that fit in all of this? Those sorts of conversations are really important, but the point of them is, when is the framework set in stone, and when is it what you think you say it is, which is that it is open to flexibility and discussion? And I think that's an important point just to flesh out. I keep hearing this bit, and again, we might disagree on this, we might have a different nuance to this. The market leads, the market leads. To an extent it does, but the borough has to represent its residents and have a sense of ambition for those residents of the things they want to see and feel. And I think that has to be part of the equation too. It cannot just be, here is the market and this is what it gives us. We need to shape that, and the process of shaping that, I think, is really important to try to understand. I remember when Councillor Tate signed the New River deal against the advice that he was given. He went ahead and did it anyway, and we were screwed for 7 years because of the process that went through New River. It was a mess from top to bottom. 7 years later, the aquadrome is on its knees because it hasn't had the capital investment, and this council's had to put its hand in its pocket to keep it going. The ice rink the same. And I feel for those users, I feel for all those people that care about those facilities, and they're critical parts of this equation too. What's going to happen to the bowls club? That's a question and a half as well. Do they get a site off-site? Where are they looked after in all of this? It's all part of this, isn't it? So that's the notion of where the market rests of leading this, and where this council's responsibility is to lead for the residents as well. I think that's important, and I'd like to understand that a little bit more. Then I think there's an interesting point around, you are right about your 30 to 40 million of investing in the aquadrome, but it's what's going to be in the aquadrome. What shape and form does the aquadrome take going forward, and how members can be part of that process and aren't just presented with a fait accompli of this is what we think the aquadrome is going to be. And then finally, I think there is this sense of, great to hear you've got an announcement coming. Look forward to hearing whatever that is when it's announced. But in the context of it, again, it's this little bit of, where are the members involved in this? Where is that relationship of, you've got these really exciting things, that's great, and, you know, you're announced it at the cabinet meeting, we'll all come along to the cabinet meeting and hear what you've got to say. Actually, at the last cabinet meeting, and admittedly, it was difficult because you weren't there, and respect that, but there was a sense of the decision being taken within 5 minutes. Here's the motion, we've dealt with that. Here's Councillor Minnis-Brown making the announcement on your behalf, reading out your statement, and 5 minutes, the process is all over and done with, and we're straight into getting on with it. That didn't show respect, I think, from the cabinet to backbenchers who had raised those concerns, and that, I think, infuriated people. You know, we had a motion, we had a debate, this has been ongoing, and it got 5 minutes friffed at cabinet that was over and done within half an hour. That's not an executive, I think, showing respect to members. So I push back on that and say, as an executive, you just need to think about how you're making these decisions and the way they reflect on you, the way they reflect on us, and the way they reflect to residents. Because I thought that was pretty poor that night in the way you made the decisions. And again, it's a process point. And again, that led us to the reason why I think we're here this evening, just to try to get underneath some of this, to understand it better, and hopefully join you on the journey that you're taking. Because we want to be on that journey too. But we've got to have confidence in you and confidence in it. The master plan, the framework, whatever you want to call it, to do that. So if I could explore those bits with you, just those three maybe core areas, the market element, who's leading who, the framework, master plan, just how flexible is it, and what do you do with all these wonderful operators you have in your back pocket that you're telling us are wanting to come to Basingstoke? When do those other things get knocked out?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I do think that there needs to be an understanding. It would be helpful if there was more understanding that a lot of these are outline decisions that are taken, and that, as the leader pointed out at the cabinet meeting, there's a lot more work that is going to take place, a lot more consultation before final decisions are taken, and clearly that there isn't a sort of shared understanding of quite where what we're approving. It is a framework. It doesn't seek to set out, can't set out the detail, and so there's more work, for instance, going on the mix of uses that there will be in the aquadrome. We've got Duncan's company giving us further advice on that, and particularly in the context of much greater cost of energy, which has to be taken into account. So you'll forgive me, my memories about New River and Councillor Tate ignoring advice, and that it was 7 years ago is not my memory of it. But anyway, yes. So I'm sure he wouldn't have taken a decision like that without the support of officers. But anyway, yeah. So but a serious point about the balance between the market and the role that we have as a council, absolutely correct. I think the starting point does need to be that we're dealing with people who, in business, understand how leisure works, and we're not experts at that. And those councils that have attempted to do that, I think, have got themselves generally into trouble. But what I think our role is to, as you say, shape the market. We have an opportunity. I think we're in a fortunate position of selecting competing leisure attractions for the leisure park, and therefore I see our role as making sure we get the right balance that's going to serve all ages, families, and of residents, and will support what we're trying to do in the town centre in terms of regeneration of the town centre, and that's where the advice comes in from our property consultants and our leisure consultants, but ultimately we need to make that call as a council, and that isn't just one based upon the bottom line. We have a broader responsibility, and I'm clear about that. And so, I hope I can reassure you on that point. So, there's clearly something of a gap of understanding, and I hope that if it takes this session tonight to help to close that gap, that's for the good, and we need to look at how we can improve things in the future. But there's always going to be an issue that we can't share all the information as early as we perhaps might all like to share it. And we do have to recognise that there are commercial confidences at stake here, and so but we will endeavour to do what's best overall for our residents and take on board our responsibilities to our fellow councillors.
Thank you. And Councillor Tuck.
Thank you. I'd certainly like to thank Councillor Isaac for facilitating contact with my residents. I had someone who has technical know-how on heat exchange between ice rinks and swimming pools, and he's been very helpful putting them in touch with the right people, and similarly also with residents that engaged with me regarding climbing walls. So thank you for that. And I think we are looking at driving some meetings with some potential operators. I think I felt confused between the framework idea, because I was seeing the words framework, which sounded like it was going to be everything just hanging around, and I was very unclear as to what was fixed in stone and what is therefore excluded going forward. I think I've heard some explanations that nothing is potentially excluded, but I would like to understand a bit more about how do we go about progressing other ideas. What is the process going to be now for selecting the mix? We've had some great ideas from some of our speakers. I'm quite sure everybody else has residents champing at the bit, dying to get stuck in. And I would like to know how we engage more directly. I really want us to be going for this. I had a very interesting conversation today with the contracts manager for the leisure park at Winchester City Council. I looked at that 50-metre pool and I thought, why can't we have one? It's not something I personally feel strongly about, but I thought, let's look into this. And what she had to say was fascinating, and it was not what I expected her to say. I mean, I could tell you that the build cost was £43 million, and that just opened last year. The tender said very clearly and specifically, make us £1 million a year and don't put your bid in if you can't. I'd be fascinated to see, they've not been operating a year, but it'll be interesting to see whether that has become a reality, given the changes of late. But more interestingly, on how much the 50-metre element of the pool is used. She said, excluding galas and Swim England events, less than 10% of the total throughput are there specifically for the 50-metre pool. 95% of the lane swim is in a 25-metre pool, so they have a 2-metre thing that pops up in the middle and gives you 2 shorter pools, and that is how they use it the majority of the time. And approximately 1 hour a day, the boom is down to give you your 50 metres. And I think that's where we need to weigh up, is that what we feel is the best mix? And we have to remember that whilst galas and Swim England give you kudos, and that's what they wanted, the council decided we want that wow factor. We want an architect designed pool setting, etc., which has had its complications, and I can tell you about that another time. But it was very intriguing, and learning from somebody who's been through putting in 2 leisure centres was very interesting, piles of wisdom to gather. I think the other angle was that it was just a lot of the people there, they wanted the wow factor, and they had financed it, that's what I was going to tell you. They financed it by capital borrowing over 30 years, I'm told, of which Winchester University put in 15 million, the Pindar Trust 1 million, and HCC put in, I'm afraid it was a derisory amount. Not enough to get their logo on it, put it that way. But the university, the draw there was they effectively bought their time in the pool, and so certain amounts of time that it's closed to the public, or they take over a certain amount of the pool, which might be a factor for us if we're looking at drawing academic establishments here. And again, obviously, if you're doing 50-metre swimming with galas, that is time the pool is closed to residents. And it's that pyramid. I know it's lovely to have the pinnacle of achievement and all the rest, and how much does that inspire people to get stuck into swimming? But then what's the reality of, actually, most of our residents, we live in an island nation, you just need to learn to swim and have some fun. You know, so I think it's getting that balance, and I'm sure you're well placed to look into that, but I think we also want to make some of that judgment call about, do we want the gold standard, or do we want to accept that actually we want to meet perhaps what is more people's need more of the time? I don't know. But I think, reflecting on what other councillors have said, it's the engagement. We all put our heads above the parapet to get stuck in and help you make these decisions. And I think we'd like to do more of that.
So just that Duncan responds on the
Absolutely.
pool aspects of it, and then at the outset there was a point about selection of operators, and perhaps Keith could talk to that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Tuck. Yeah, really enjoyed your contribution just there. I think you've highlighted some really important issues, and you have got a wealth of research that the council's commissioned over the last 7 years to support you in navigating some of the choices that you have around where you invest your money. I think one really important thing to note is that there is a significant shift in thinking in public sector leisure. Now, we've been heavily involved with that, in terms of the focus traditionally was on building sport and leisure facilities, quite frankly, for white middle class people. And when you looked at who used public sector leisure facilities, in the main it was white middle class people, and it actually was enhancing the inequalities of those communities that couldn't afford or couldn't access, or quite frankly weren't interested in participating in what you typically call wet and dry leisure. the government sports agency, Sport England, has now recognised that, and they are looking to support the public sector in pivoting its focus more around well-being of communities, which doesn't throw out skate parks. It includes skate parks because of the inclusion element and the youth element and the support around mental health, and the fact that all the research is saying that less young people actually want to take part in formal sport. You know, we've just undertaken some research for Sport Wales recently, which has reinforced that. So I think some of the points from the audience were very, very well made around, you know, not seeing the needs of Basingstoke through the eyes of a 50-year-old. You know, you need to see it through the eyes of every age group that you want to have a happy and healthy and engaged life. So coming back to the point around the 50-metre pool, you've already got an awful lot of hard work that's been done. That's the methodologies are absolutely spot on, and I think you've hit the nail on the head around, you know, if you build a 50-metre pool, it will be for an absolute minority of people that benefit, and the capital cost of that extra 25 metres and the extra seating and the extra plant and the extra footprint is not insignificant. And with the significant amount of money that you are prepared to invest, 30-40 million as I understand it, which is, you know, very rare in my experience when I go around the country, making sure that every single pound you put into your leisure vision for your residents and for visitors obviously needs to be very carefully thought through. And certainly the process that we've been undertaking with the council so far, and the steer that we've had, is to explore those options thoroughly and very carefully, and particularly as a result of the shock we've had with COVID and the shock we've had around utilities, to revisit some of the work that's been done to just stress test it. Is what was recommended before the Ukraine energy crisis still going to work, still going to meet people's needs? And in many cases it's not. So questions about how much leisure water do you include in the aquadrome need to be explored again. The actual amount of water space to be provided and the format of the swimming pools needs to be revisited again, and that work's underway to come back with some balanced arguments as to what will hopefully best meet residents' needs. So I think on the pool side of things, you've really got a great handle on some of the challenges and also opportunities around building. My personal view is that a 50-metre pool is only going to benefit a very small number of residents. However, looking at what you really want to achieve and who you want to achieve it for, particularly those people that have lower disposable incomes, would be a really good starting point, particularly around water safety and around swimming for health, which is increasingly going to be really important for people. You've got an ageing population as well. People love swimming. You can keep swimming until, you know, right to the end of life. And so that's an important investment. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those brilliant things you can keep doing as you get older. And, you know, the water space you've got in Basingstoke is fantastic, but the profile probably needs to change a little bit in the future.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. So, master plan versus framework. I'll try and give a best answer I can on this one. It's probably best to try and explain the process from here. So, what the council want to avoid is individual operators, leisure operators, applying for planning permission in a very piecemeal process. What we would want to do is to work with our colleagues in planning colleagues to adopt a more holistic approach to the whole leisure park, so that we can look at the synergies around different plots working together, potentially in relation to energy efficiency, the sustainability agenda, travel plans, transport assessments, and detailed design codes. So inevitably what will come out of that to some degree will be a change in or an amendment in terms of design. So it's that type of approach which means that the framework or master plan as it sits now cannot be set in stone because of those factors, because of the benefits and the holistic approach. They will slightly change. The point that was made in relation to how do you choose operators or what's the process. So there has been a marketing, direct marketing and indirect marketing campaign so there are leisure operators that have expressed an interest. In terms of who do you select, it comes back a bit to the point that the councillor raised, where your residents have made contact. We've set up a meeting. We're looking to explore what opportunities can be taken forward, and I think that's the way we would work. But we have to be mindful of being inundated with a number of different leisure operators who want different types of operation, and how that could have an impact on the town centre going forward. And so there has been a matrix designed by the property agents JLL, which sets out a criteria for the type of operators that might suit the leisure park or may suit a town centre or an alternative location. And that's based on value, the covenant strength, and the alignment with council strategies and policies. So that has gone, James, you'll have to remind me because it's before my time, but it has gone to a previous committee. Is it CEP or EPH?
I believe it was a sort of cabinet briefing, so it wasn't a public committee as such, but it was discussed.
So that's that matrix scoring would be the way that we would look to try and differentiate which operators would go where, but that would be in consultation, looking at robust financial business plans as well.
Did you have anything come back, Councillor Tuck?
No, just except to say that obviously I want us to go get rather than just, you know, the marketing, the mail shot that everyone gets too many of, and it's just put to one side. And I just think, you know what, this is our moment to really promote Basingstoke and to really up our game and raise the bar.
Councillor Bean? Oh, sorry. Did you put your hand up? Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Edwards, sorry. Apology.
Right. Thank you, Chair. And thank you for this call in. I am finding it really interesting tonight, and I've heard so many concerns from residents, in the press, from other councillors, and to me the issue is communication. The information is there, the research has been done, and you know, just listening to Duncan tonight, listening to his rationale as to why we can't have why a 50-metre pool is not practical, the experiences from other councils is really, really interesting. And before I came here tonight, I looked at the consultation, I looked at the feedback, and people, our residents, were saying, I want a 50-metre pool, I want a velodrome, I want a snow dome, and I want a stadium. And the not official communication, but the communication back going back to residents is no, no, no. And that's all we hear is no. But actually, there's a real reason why it's a no. And it's not because we're being tight and we don't want to spend the money, or because we just can't be bothered. It's because it's not feasible and it's not the best for the residents long term. And I think we really, really need to communicate that. But I also feel even tonight that I'm getting mixed messages. So I've got a document saying a draft master plan, and then I'm hearing it's not a master plan, it's a framework, and then I'm also hearing nothing's off the table. But realistically, we're not going to get a 50-metre pool. So I think we really need to set residents' expectations to say it's not realistic. And for me now, if a leisure operator comes forward and says, I can give you a 50-metre pool, to me that's a massive red flag, and that is a concern. How are they going to do it? Why are they going to do it? Why are they going to invest this money when actually research shows it's not a very good thing to do? And I also think that we need to look at 30 to 40 million pounds. That's a lot of money. I'd be quite happy if somebody gave me 30 million. But in the terms of a leisure park, what is that going to get? I have no idea at all. I have no idea why we've reached that amount of money. It sounds very generous. Is it? Isn't it? And why? I think we need to look at. And I would say, just picking up on the holistic approach, I agree with it, but it's very difficult for us tonight to make a decision on whether or not we progress forward with these plans, because if we've got an announcement next month, we don't know what it is. So how can we make a holistic approach now if we don't know what's coming up? So again, it feels very piecemeal. So I think from my side of things, set the residents' expectations, be open and honest. You know, I think Duncan's done a fantastic job, and I think, you know, his research does need to be put into the public domain, because not everybody's going to be watching this meeting, not everybody knows this meeting's taking place, and you've got very good arguments, so you completely swayed me, so well done for that. Yeah, just communication is vital, and I just don't think we're getting the fundamental basics out there at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I think you're right about communication, but what I would say is that there's been a lot of voices who've urged us to look at multi-use sports stadium, a snow dome, a 50-metre pool, and so we listen to that and we respond to that, and we have spent a lot of time looking at those, what is the art of the possible with those, because we don't want to be accused of ignoring it. But we are now, now that we've approved a framework, a master plan, we are now moving into the stage where those decisions will need to be taken. And I think tonight has been useful in perhaps some giving expert guidance on why some of these perfectly understandable aspirations for a snow dome and so forth have been so strongly voiced, but really are not realistic. But there are some very attractive leisure operations that are going to be coming forward as we hope to be able to disclose quite soon. So I think we are at that point now where decisions will have to be taken, and we need to bring people along with us as much as possible, particularly leaders in the community, such as councillors, and we will aim to do that and take lessons from the journey so far.
Thank you. So can I just ask, before tonight's meeting, where is the information on why things like a 50-metre pool is not feasible, and can we honestly say nothing is off the table?
We've hired Duncan's firm and to give a fresh look at the mix in the aquadrome. So yes, we're waiting for further advice from him. But we are. I think there have been reports done previously, which Duncan referred to, which do indicate that it's not something that, if you're looking at the overall benefit for residents in terms of water activity in the borough, that a 50-metre pool is one that sort of ranks as being something that's a priority. So there is the information out there, but we'll be bringing forward with Duncan's help more information on this. There's always the view that being offered that the information is not being provided, but there is a massive information that's out there, and unfortunately it's not always read.
Sorry, can I just come back on that? So if it's this 2015 plan, as a resident who hasn't got time to go on a council website, search for these documents, so when I say communication, I'm not saying residents should go and look for it. I'm saying we need to say to residents, this is the situation. We need to go to them. We need to be very clear and transparent. And I think communication, we need to push that down, and that's what we're not doing.
Okay, we'll try and do better.
I'm going to come in myself with a couple of questions, actually. I think that was sort of just touching on the leisure needs assessment, and I was having a look at that today, and I know going online and even finding the document I got was 2015, even though it said 2022, so I think that's obviously, so the information I'm about to question on is potentially out of date, but this is, obviously it's once again communication. We talked about the possibility with the aquadrome, and obviously there's money that's spent on it and there's nothing totally fixed about it, and one of the things that when I've talk through some of the facilities, talk about mixed use facilities. And one of the things that came out to me in that document was the need for a purpose-built martial arts space. And martial arts also can remember think of things like boxing and wrestling, which obviously fits different demographics rather than your white middle class, whatever it was you said earlier. I think squash was also something that was highlighted. And I'd also like to talk about the whole idea about indoor skate and BMX and all that sort of stuff, because I know that's something that we do have strong following in Basingstoke. And some of those things, there's also this sort of question, it's two questions, but it ties together. Something Mr. Peach was saying was that people that try and run those things, they are commercially very tight and it's very difficult to run them. Now, everything that we've talked about tonight is talked about the economic, commercial driven market in leisure. And as I think Councillor Harvey mentioned earlier, was the idea that we are delivering to residents. I think other councillors have said the same thing. So when a facility that would actually give great social value to our residents struggles commercially, are we looking at some kind of matrix framework to make sure that we get that balance right too?
Yeah, so it's what you say is quite illustrative of the problem. You talk about martial arts space, boxing, squash, indoor skating, BMX. There's a whole raft of different leisure pursuits we could bring to the leisure park. We are not going to be able to deliver them all, but we will try and get the best possible mix to suit the broadest range of residents in the borough. Yes, it will. We do need it to pay for itself, but we will have an eye to opportunities to sort of cross-subsidise some certain activities that in of themselves do not perhaps are not viable, but where there's demonstrable demand from our residents. Absolutely, we're not sort of speaking here as a sort of directors of some public company. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our ratepayers, but it doesn't sort of end there. We have council plan, we have priorities that we want to ensure that the new leisure park embraces those broader economic and social and well-being priorities.
I'm just happy to come in to address your question, if that's okay. If we think about public leisure facilities, they tend to be full of the things that the private sector don't want to build, and that's why they're public. And also the point you made about being priced, sensitively, and at times being priced at a level, for example, that young people can afford. A lot of the research says that young people don't have any disposable income for leisure, so they actually need help and they need free access to facilities. So if we can get the mix right within the new aquadrome, there's a sort of sweet spot financially and socially that you can try and achieve within the footprint, which should be the aim that you're looking to meet. So, currently design of public leisure facilities is looking to try and build in as much flexibility as possible, so that your martial artists can go and use space. If it's dedicated space, then that public space will not be used optimally. If it's space that they can use and a Pilates class can use and a gym class can use for toddlers, then you get much better value for money. You get much greater social value and use of that space. So I think you're as part of the process, the next almost exciting bit of this is to look to see how much public benefit you can design into the aquadrome, taking account of the fundamental needs that you have for swimming. You can't sort of get off the hook for that, I'm afraid, because the private sector won't provide swimming lessons for kids, or affordable swimming access. You can go to a posh pool and pay £15 an hour if you want, but for the general public, you've got a real responsibility, and I know it's one that you've held, with absolutely brilliantly over the years. So I think the things that some of the ideas that were suggested today, as Councillor Isaac said, are not off the table. We've got a certain footprint, you've got a certain amount of space, and it's trying to find that optimal balance. And it may be that some of those needs are not necessarily met in the aquadrome footprint, but elsewhere in the borough, through other partnerships, through school developments, through other commercial developments, etc. And again, you've got some very good research to help you with those future decisions.
Thank you. Next, I've got Councillor Jones again.
Actually, you asked the question, but I will go over it one more time. Subsidies, we talked about different people coming into the leisure park, which obviously you're going to make as a business. But are we talking, what I've been rattling on about for years is giving our youth in particular discounts. And when we're talking about letting people in to build whatever they wish to build and what we want on that leisure park, is there a possibility of actually building that in with a contract so they give the youth of Basingstoke and Dean a discount? Because at the end of the day, I represent Southam, I've represented Buckskin Ward before that, very poor area, actually living on top of the leisure park. A lot of them can't afford to go in there. Now, to my mind, we're spending 40 million or whatever on doing this. That's some of their money, whether we like it or not, and that should be a priority. Maybe the wrong place to bring it up, but I'll bring it up every time. It's something that needs to be built in when we're talking about these facilities. And obviously, I'm talking about where I represent, but a lot of people represent villages far out. It's a big old area, Basingstoke and Dean. It becomes expensive for ordinary families to come into Basingstoke with children and that to do these things. So I'd like to see some form to actually look into what can be done, not just with our swimming pools, but with the people going in there, the people who are going in there to make money, most of them.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jones. Yeah, and of course, I think our approach is going to be that some of the operators in the development of plots by them for their leisure attractions will generate revenues that we'll be able to use across the park, particularly in terms of public space, and that gives rise to the opportunity for free activities, I think. So.
Sorry, I'm not talking about free activities. I'm talking about activities going into the building and doing what other kids are doing, what other middle-class families are doing. I'm talking about working-class families who can't afford it. Now, it's a big ask, but if we don't start asking now, we'll never get it. Now, I'm putting it to you. That's something that should be built in, trying to get something changed. So I can't think of a leisure organisation rank. I don't think they've got rank anymore, but one of these places. So if people come in and, well, I don't know how you'd do it, you'd have a pass and they give you a discount of maybe £1, maybe 50p, but it's a discount. It's something that help families or something like that.
They're quite difficult to administer, these things, and to decide who's eligible and who isn't. But okay, the point you make is understood, and I'm sure that we will look at that aspect of things when it comes down to the negotiations with commercial operators. I know I can depend on it.
Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. Obviously, we've got quite a good space there, but it's not infinite. And I was wondering also in keeping with Councillor Cormick's point about heat exchange with the ice rink and the pool, not having had the benefit of talking to Councillor Tuck's constituent, it was suggested to me by could the pool and the rink be combined into a two-storey building to have that heat exchange? I have no idea if it's possible or not, but in the spirit of that communication, I thought it'd be good to at least put the point forward and maybe get an answer. Okay, shall we go first?
Thank you, Councillor Bowes. One of the other sort of public sector leisure crises that's going on is, guess what, ice rinks. They're just impossibly difficult to run without a huge subsidy at the moment. They were bad before the Ukraine situation, and now it's even worse, unfortunately. And sadly, a number of our clients and councils around the country are having some very difficult conversations because it's a much loved resource. And for the commercial operators, they will be struggling to make ends meet at the moment. So again, it's important to do your homework around facility mix and model the costs off, you know, what you've maybe suggested to say, well, look, would it work? You know, you're going to get enough income in to take account and what those technical solutions are. You know, a large ice rink and a leisure pool with you know, significant lanes for swimming, it would have a huge energy load. There'd obviously be a significant carbon implication as well that needs to be looked at. And so I think the sensible approach is to try and refine down your options to something that everybody's pretty comfortable with, and then check the affordability and sustainability, because you know there's no point coming up with an idea that you can't afford to build and you can't afford to run, particularly picking up on the point that if some aspect of the public leisure offer is consciously subsidised to support access to residents that may not be able to, you know, pay a commercial price, you know, the other people coming in will have to pay for that, or the council itself will have to find money to subsidise the operation as a whole. And we're talking millions of pounds here. If you're looking at, you know, 50-metre pools and ice rinks and, you know, facilities like that, you know, high energy intensive public leisure offers, at the moment you're looking at subsidies in the millions per annum. Whereas if you come up with a different mix, you might be able to, you know, meet the needs of more residents, find a good compromise, still be very attractive, still put Basingstoke on the map, still get people wanting to drive a decent distance to visit you. And that's the balance you've got. You know, 30-40 million sounds a lot. It doesn't build you a lot of leisure these days, particularly with construction costs increasing as well. So again, ambition needs to meet affordability.
Okay. I would have thought that the exchange bit was. This sounds like we're not getting a rink then. That sounds very much like an ice rink is off the table, does it? No. I mean, but if we do, so you couldn't have a new one, sort of, just to, redecorate the old one.
Well, there is an existing ice rink operator, and I think it's quite clear that it's perfectly possible to upgrade, refurbish the existing ice rink, and therefore it would. It's particularly in view of our climate change objectives, it would make a lot of sense to fully pursue that, which is what we're doing. It's taking longer than I would like, but there we go. But that is a way forward, and I understand that the ice rink operator is committed to Basingstoke and also wants to invest further in that ice rink. So I hope that is where we end up.
Thank you. The other point I had, I'm afraid, going back to the stadium, I was looking at what it says here, and he's saying, looking at York, for example, they've done one recently, and that they're with a view with ancillary facilities and being developed as part of the project, with a view to achieving operational sustainability. I had a quick look at the York one, and it is very, very new. It's only just opened 2022, I believe. So it's probably a little bit soon to say whether or not they're achieving operational sustainability or making a profit. But some of the clubs that have gone bankrupt, I mean, quite a lot of those, or in trouble, quite a lot of those suffered as a result of COVID, which hopefully we won't be having to go through anything like that again, or at least not in the foreseeable future. and I was looking at the idea of concerts only having 2 a year because everybody wants to go to Southampton or Reading. So we're basically saying nobody wants to come here, which I don't believe. And surely if we had something like that, then maybe people might want to come here more. Okay, thanks.
Thank you for those points. Looking at how attractive an arena like this would be, there is obviously an established market of indoor and outdoor venues already that have agreements with promoters, and the challenge is a new facility in Basingstoke would need to provide something different from what's available already, and the advice is that they would struggle with a 5,000 seater stadium, for example. It's quite difficult to fill that number of seats for concerts and the cost of setting it up and setting it down. And the advice is that you would really struggle. And it's not necessarily a particularly good idea, and it could be a very, very expensive long-term decision, and somebody would need to underwrite that loss. You know, a lot of the stadium developments recently have been sort of public-private partnerships where the local authority have got behind their local club, and some are doing okay, but often those that are more prudent are more present in terms of the league status of the club that it's in, the number of people it's attracting day to day. Where possible, if you can combine those the stadium with other public services and commercial activities within the Undercroft, you know, that all helps. But you know, at the moment, you know, there are plenty of examples where you know, you could, well, you wouldn't be able to build your aquadrome and support the stadium. You know, it's about choices and it's about priorities.
Okay, Councillor Durrant's next.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. We talked earlier on about the time it's taken us to deliver anything, and it seems to be a problem raised by a number of people. Once we get the big reveal in March, for want of a better expression, what's the time scale for filling the framework, for people putting in proposals for leisure facilities or whatever? What's our time scale?
Just make the point. It's not a big reveal in March. This is a single leisure operator that we're talking about here.
Okay, I mean that's still a big reveal because it's obviously an important factor in the delivery of the leisure centre.
What I'm trying to explain is that it is not going to be a case of a big reveal of all the leisure.
No.
That we have earmarked for the leisure park.
No, I understand that, but you know, it's starting to fill the gap in the framework, and I'm just wondering what is our timescale now for other people other than the ones you've been talking to, perhaps getting in their proposals and their point of view across. Where are we in that sort of?
Thank you, Councillor. So at the moment we've had some expressions of interests from leisure operators. Over the next few months we'll be looking to firm up some of those expressions of interest, looking to heads of terms, look to try and understand, work through their business plans, financial business plans, to make sure they're robust, and also assess how their offer benefits the leisure park in relation to competition with the town centre. So already we're starting those discussions. I would say it will be a few months yet before we actually get an operator signed up fully to a specific plot, and part of that is down to the work that I mentioned earlier in terms of the transport plans and the design codes that we'll be working on. But the level of interest we've had so far is extremely promising.
We will be. The approach will involve an overall planning framework, and by virtue of being on a plot by plot basis, this could be organic. This isn't going to be like the appointment of a master developer who will come in and there'll be a big bang and everyone will know exactly who's going where on which plot. That's, I think, a strength of this process. Certainly hope so. So it will take time. But it's our land, and the decision we take should be right, plot by plot.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up on a few of the things that have been said, and listening very closely to the debate and to what people have said. There does seem to be a little bit of a tension here between the idea of the plot by plot, and we'll let things go in that kind of ad hoc fashion, and then what was said by having the vision, bringing people together, and having an overarching holistic approach. You can't have both, and if you try to have both, you might wind up getting back to where Muse was on Basing View, which was self-defeating in the end, or you wind up with New River Retail, which was all-encompassing and was a disaster all in the end. It's just got to be clear here. What is it you're saying? Is there a holistic vision? And is there an element of you guiding this? Or is it plot by plot? Or is it a bit of both? And the reason why I'm saying that, let me explain this bit because it picks up the other points for you to come back on, is who in the world are we doing this for? Are we doing this for the commercial operators who are pitching up wanting to bring their businesses here? And yes, we want them. Or do we want them here because they will benefit our residents with the offers they may make that make the place tick, that give it a sense of gravity that we want it to have? I know you said in terms of March, look to the Cabinet, we will, that will give us an indication, great. But there is an element of equality of opportunity here. If you're saying the public offer is the Aquadrome, that is then concerning, because the public offer can't just be the Aquadrome. The public offer is the leisure park and what the leisure park offers the people of Basingstoke and Dean and the region. That's why the idea of the skate park, the idea of the BMX cannot be part of the Aquadrome. It has to be another part of the site that offers that kind of public, and it has to be public because it ain't going to generate its own money in that sense. So it has to be part of our public offer. And the other point, which is really important, is that in that sense of what we offer people, it ain't stones and a picnic space. Here it's free, and here's your part of the leisure park. It's here are the services we seek to offer to be inclusive, so that residents can take part as any other residents would. And there is no sense of exclusivity. It has to be inclusive. So I guess what I'm pushing back on is the well-being point and the leadership point of how you get a leisure park to do that. And I respect what our colleague consultant is telling us. I've got no issue with what you're saying. You're giving us it straight. But the market has got to bend. And you're saying you can only get so much for 30 to 40 million, or this is where we are currently. We have got to think longer term than that, in terms of a leisure park that's going to have to last a lot more than the current crisis. And I guess that's where the energy point comes in, is where all of that comes in. I'm just saying there is a lot more to this than just taking the operators plot by plot. Sometimes you're saying that, and sometimes you're not. And the language isn't coherent here. It's not all joined up. It doesn't feel as if this thing is actually joined up at the moment.
Well, I don't agree. I don't accept your dichotomy. Actually, that commercial operations can't be ones that serve the public good. You know, the lot of commercial operations work very well because they do serve the public good and people come. And you use the word ad hoc, and you've always got you're always very you're very careful with your choice of words, but you know, ad hoc. It isn't ad hoc. There's going to be an overall vision, an overall mix of uses we want to do there, and we will be talking to operators on a plot by plot basis. And so it's within that framework that this is all going to take place, and over time we're not going to rush into it. We're going to get the best operators, but all within an overall vision of what's suitable and what's going to work best for our residents.
Thank you. That's exactly what.
Fine. Okay. Good.
Exactly what
Good. I always enjoy our debates, Councillor Harley.
That's exactly what I'm asking for. I'm asking because, forgive me, but what you were saying was different to what others were saying, and you're now melding that together in a way that is beginning to sound coherent. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to you by saying that, but that's now coming across. Now the question is, how do we fill those blanks in? That's really important. As what all others have said, it's how we help you do that, and it isn't just left to the executive alone to do it. I think that's really important.
Yes, but ultimately we are the executive, and we will have to take the decisions, and then we're accountable with you. Yes, absolutely. But that's where the sort of burden rests with the executive under the constitution in this council. But absolutely, we want to inform and receive the views and the advice from councillors of all parties. And officers and consultants.
The only other point I would make, and this is different to speaking of the point, I forgot to make this point, it's important. If you take the example of we won't build it because commercially and so on, and two events a year aren't enough, all that advice, we would have never built the Anvil because Southampton, Reading and the others had all those wonderful facilities. We built the Anvil and now it's a nationally renowned building. It's a nationally renowned concert centre. We improved the point. Sometimes that equation does need to be thought about. I respect what you're saying, but I would just push back. Basingstoke has actually done something hugely successful for us. The market might be very much at the moment, which I respect. Push back a little bit on that.
Thank you. This was actually sort of supposed to be a questioning point. We sort of drifted a bit into debate. It's like I've had a few sort of nudges going. Anyway, I've got three more questions. I don't know. Hopefully, I've got Councillor Tuck, Councillor Compton Burnett, and then Councillor Mamalaneni. So, Councillor Tuck first.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on, I think it was Councillor James mentioned about discounts and whatever. I did experience Windsor and Maidenhead gave their residents, I think it was a 10% discount card when they redid their leisure park for the first 10 years of its usage or whatever. So definitely if one were to choose to do that, one could. But I wanted to pick up also on the ice rink. Obviously, I saw that's got a longer than 30-year lease remaining, and it was great to hear that they're very keen to keep doing what they do. Is it possible, though, because it is looking a wee bit tired in places, how can we encourage them to do a bit of a refurb? I mean, I noticed, sorry to say this, but Winchester were consulting on a large Olympic ice rink just before Christmas with a very enthusiastic operator who wanted to do that. I don't know that that's what they will go forward with, but I want, this is our regional draw here right now, this minute. How do we make sure it remains, top of the pile?
Yeah, but at the risk of going into sort of sensitive commercial negotiations, and officers will all look aghast, there is we're the freeholder, there's a long leaseholder, and there's the ice, Planet Ice. And it's in the public domain that there are discussions between Planet Ice and the long leaseholder for that interest to be acquired by Planet Ice. We have to approve that, and as part of that, we would obviously need to ensure that the repairs that are required to the ice rink are carried out.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Compton Burnett.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentations. They've been really, really helpful and interesting. We've said a lot about communication this evening, and I totally agree that that's one of the big problems, in that this amazing research has been done, but we haven't seen it, and neither have our residents. And I think another important point to make is that communications is two-way. So we're all in this together. No, you guys, the researchers, the councillors, the residents, the officers, we're all in this together. We all want the best for Basingstoke. And the more of us that can get together and work on it with that vision, the better. And I know that there was a resident survey, and I knew a few ideas from councillors went into the pot. And then there was fantastic research. But then from my perspective as a councillor, and certainly from the perspective of many residents, everything went into a black hole. And we all want to keep working with it. We want to see the work that you did. We want to look at the world as it is now post-COVID, with the new emphasis that you're talking about with young people. We want to look at the older generations. We want to look at the hospital that's probably going to be rebuilt. Will it have its hydrotherapy pool in the hospital anymore? We don't know, but have we actually talked to them to find out? There's an awful lot of work going on in the Aquadrome with people coming, rehabilitation from strokes, and there's lots of new work with people suffering from cancer. Have we been talking about that? Have we been looking at those opportunities? Because certainly from the point of view of the Aquadrome, that's been something we've only been looking at recently. And we've changed the cafe into an area where they can have small groups. And I know that's just a small example, but it's indicative of how things are changing, and have we explored all of that? And I think it's only by engaging with our residents and with us lot on the ground who talk to our residents every day that we can really understand what's going on there, and how this can be what is best suited to our residents. So, Councillor Isaac, it was great to hear that at this point you want to receive advice from councillors and officers and consultants. And my question is, great, so how do we get involved, and how can we represent our residents in these decisions now?
Councillor Compton-Burnett, we are at the point where we're going to have to start making decisions on this, and I think our residents would want us to be making decisions. I think that on the point of communication, yes, there's work to be done, and I think we need to look at how we bring this updates to EPH, and also potentially all member briefings and workshops in future. Because I do understand that particularly on this issue of the leisure park, there is a sort of a depth of interest from councillors that we need to respond to.
And I think the final question will be Councillor Mamalaneni.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is straightforward question, ma'am. What kind of confidence or measures in place we got? We learn what kind of lessons we learned from the new New River, and is it going to be another New River episode, another legal challenge, another investigation, and then they will pull it out? So how do we stop it happening?
Well, we've taken that decision because we're not going with a master developer. So we're going on a plot-by-plot basis. So we'll have direct communication with individual leisure operators. It won't be a repeat of Muse either, because Muse were effectively a project manager, and they weren't bringing in, they weren't prepared to put their own capital into Basing View. So I'm confident that, as it's turned out, we didn't start this way, but I'm confident now that the approach that we have before us today, which is enshrined in the master plan, is the right way, and will ensure that we have the best control in the future as a council on this, and that we are talking to individual operators who will be held accountable as part of any deal that we negotiate with them. They'll have to deliver. They'll have to deliver on the buildings, and I hope by that way we will make sure we get the right buildings developed by them, because it'll be exactly what their blueprint is for their particular operation. So does that answer your question?
Thank you. Well, that is one aspect of it. The new river is delayed, the project is delayed because of the legal challenges. So do you anticipate any legal challenges with this approach?
If you're a public body and you are seeking to develop and procure developments, there's always the risk of legal challenge. But I think because it's going to be plot by plot, and it's not one master developer who's looking at the whole site comprehensively, then I think the level of risk, I would hope, I'll look to Fiona on this, would be of a much different order, much smaller order. But but I always defer to the wisdom of our chief legal officer.
I think all I can say is that the officers are taking advice as they go along, so we'll prevent, on the legal and the procurement side, we'll be giving the officers, and the portfolio holder the strongest advice on the way forward, really. So I can't say much more than that. As Councillor says, you can't ever say there won't be a challenge. We don't know. We just need to make sure we've we've given the best advice and people have, adhered to that advice.
It actually succeed with a legal challenge. It took 2 years. That's the trouble, which isn't very helpful, as we know.
Okay, well, thank you very much, officers and Councillor Isaac, for answering all the questions. And we're now going to move to debate. So, anybody like to discuss anything? What I'm going to do first of all, as I've been advised, just to remind people, because we've kind of gone on quite all over the place with a bit, that the Scrutiny Committee consider the information provided in the response request for a call-in request. And what we're going to try to be deciding is whether to, 1, refer the decision back to Cabinet for reconsideration, setting out the nature of the committee's concerns, or we decide not to refer the matter back to Cabinet, in which case the decision shall take effect immediately. Councillor Harvey.
I'm looking around who's going to kick off first. Come on. Be brave and go first. I just think it's interesting, the debate we've had this evening, from lots of different perspectives. And where it leads you to, and I don't want to repeat everything that's been said this evening, is in the sense of why we sat around the table having the conversation we're having. And it's because of the sense of disengagement and the lack of inclusion that many members do genuinely feel. Now, that's been addressed in different ways this evening by the conversation we've had and the information that's been put on the table. I think there are members of the MAP who feel as if they have not been included or not been listened to in a way that they would like or they consider, and that's a fair criticism that needs to be considered in the way that MAPs operate. Not that has been expressed by them, Councillor Isaac. So, I mean, with all due respect, I mean, they've expressed that feeling of lack of inclusion. If you're not willing to listen to that and accept that, then I do think that's a point, and I'm inviting you to do so. Excellent. That's all I'm asking you to do. Let's not criticise the MAP members just because they're not here for this evening for a variety of different reasons, no doubt. But nonetheless, we are, and we're debating this, and we've heard what they've got to say, and so have you. So let's treat it with the respect it deserves. I think in that sense, then how we go forward from here as Cabinet to listen is around communication and around engagement and inclusion. And I feel that perhaps, rather than it being a map in the hands of the executive, it should be a task and finish panel of the council that works in parallel with the executive to discuss the opportunities, explore the evidence, and instead of having an hour's debate at EPH where we get a report and you spend an hour debating it and you ask some questions, or instead of having an all-member briefing which is necessarily effectively a couple of questions at the most and it's not very in-depth, and the last one we had a presentation that nobody could read, in all honesty, and again, that was a matter that needs to be reflected upon in terms of the way things are communicated. A task and finish panel that can work with you in some depth and offer that level of engagement that members could feel confident in. And that communication that goes back to groups and to colleagues in a way that we engage with might be a constructive way forward. It's that notion of an outcome, rather than just kicking it back to Cabinet and saying, reconsider it when you're going to go ahead with it anyway, because even when we do ask you to reconsider, it'll still happen. So let's work constructively as to how we can work alongside you to make this thing work. And that you've said nothing's on the table. Colleagues who do want to see the idea of the 50-metre pool and all the other things considered, that debate can be had effectively and constructively too. I think that's important. Doesn't necessarily hold you up, but what it does do is have something in parallel working with you.
Councillor Isaac, sorry.
I mean, my point is not everything should be vested in the hands of the 7 members of the executive. There are 54 councillors on this authority and we are a council of no overall control at the moment. Let us respect that in the sense of how we do things and work with you so that you get this right. We get this right. Have to get this right. It's been screwed up so badly with New River. It's been a mess for so long. Let's work together to try to achieve the best for our residents. That's the bottom line, isn't it? That's what we're driving at. So let's try to constructively do that and be as inclusive as we possibly can with all of the views of the members, but in a way that works parallel to your processes.
Anybody else? Oh, sorry, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, actually, I'd go along with it. I think a task and finish would be ideal. I don't see why it should hold you up. What's holding you up is coming to these meetings now and trying to explain. Obviously, your consultant there that's being paid to come here, and they could be doing other work. You know, it's a fact of life. You know, do you come to many of these with us? I don't think you do. So it's no good pulling faces. What's come out of this meeting is the communication's broken down. Now, the way to bring it forward, and I think everybody in this building is saying it, we want a good leisure centre. How we go about it will be your final decision. But we as councillors like some input. I obviously don't want to hold it up, nor does anybody else. The sooner we get these buildings, the better. Because the ones we've got now, if I'm really honest, are falling around our ears. But I'm no expert on that. But I think a task and finish would be something positive. I don't discount members' briefings because I think we need more of them. But members need to come along. But and I think if we have proper members' briefings where we can actually sit in the room and talk about these things would be a positive. But I know Paul obviously doesn't agree with the idea of members' briefings. But I think everything counts because we might say something really off the wall when you think actually that's not a bad idea or whatever. Or so I'd go along with that. I'd put that as a recommendation that we go along with that.
Councillor Tuck.
I have to say, yes, I like the idea of a task and finish group. I think you've seen the level of interest here tonight, and I think we all want to be involved and engaged more. And as conduits back to our residents, I think that's also a very helpful communication path for the Cabinet. I think we need more in-depth discussion. The presentations are helpful, but actually that's just not the time to roll up your sleeves and really discuss the ins and outs of various things. And I do believe more heads better than one. And actually I think the councillors that are going to spend the time coming to a task and finish group are going to be the ones that really want to put some time and effort into thinking through options, issues, and the judgments that have to necessarily take place. And some of those are going to include what do we want to subsidise because it's not commercially viable, but it's a great service and should be there for the well-being of our residents. And those are kind of things that, yes, I know the buck stops with the Cabinet and with the leader, but actually we do all want to contribute. And I think you will bring us all along far more effectively through going through that loop of engagement.
Okay, I think it looks like everyone's talked out. I'm just going to remind people that we've got 2 choices here. We've either got to refer the decision back to Cabinet for reconsideration, setting out the nature of our concerns. So obviously communication is something that seems to have come out a lot, and this idea of potentially better engagement. So whether there's something around that we can put it into there, or we decide not to refer it back to Cabinet. So basically, is it going back to Cabinet? I think, talking to Fiona, you said it possibly would go via EPH. Do you want to clarify?
Yeah, so I think your options are either to refer it back to Cabinet with your recommendations that you think a task and finish group would be the way to go forward, although to actually establish a task and finish group it would go to EPH or CEP, so you could decide not to refer it back to Cabinet but then put on the work programme for, is it EPH? I'm not sure which is the relevant one, but whichever policy committee, put it on the work programme to establish a task and finish through that basis. So I think those are your options, but you need to decide whether it's going back to Cabinet or it's not, I think, primarily.
I think the sense of referring it back to Cabinet is that Cabinet need to show us willing. We've shown willing to Cabinet, so we need them to be on board for this. And I think you need to reflect on the decision and reflect on the debate we've had tonight, because there's been a lot of concern raised and a lot of issues raised that you should reflect on. So the context of the minutes will reflect this evening the debate we've had, and Cabinet need to think carefully about that communication and all the other points that have been raised. If Cabinet are willing to work with a task and finish panel, they can affirm that, they can show their willingness for that. If that is positive, then of course then you can set it up, then it can be moved to be set up, and we can do that as quickly as we possibly can. No one wants to introduce delay. What we want is clarity, and what we want is effective engagement and constructive engagement. So if that is the direction of travel that Fiona's nodding at me, then Chair, that's a motion for referral back to Cabinet and referral to EPH to take it forward, if EPH is indeed the committee, not CEP, and that could be taken offline. The appropriate relevant committee would be fair, wouldn't it?
So I just confirm that if it's referred back to Cabinet, then there needs to be a Cabinet within 10 days to reconsider it. So it's quite a quick turnaround. Yeah.
Okay, so I think I go to move to summing up at this point. Do I? Is that right?
Oh no, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then signatories.
And do that, right? Okay, so just to sum up, I think we've listened. There's been a lot. I think actually, personally, I found this. I thought it was very good. It's almost quite cathartic to actually hear, to actually get this debate, going, and hearing people to say about the whole leisure park, because it is something I feel really strongly about. I remember Basingstoke. I've lived in Basingstoke most of my life. I remember Basingstoke without a leisure park. I remember it when it used to have an old ruin of a swimming pool in what's now the middle of a roundabout, and that was it, and then we had yes, Tony will remember it as well. I know I don't look that old, but and then obviously seeing then we had the Westfield Lido, and then it developed to the Aquadrome, and then we had bowling, and then we had the ice rink, and it was all just such amazing stuff, and it has aged and it does need revamping. I know I've brought up my children, and they do an awful lot of different sports and activities, and some of those things are things that have been talked about tonight, and all of that stuff is really good, and we've got to make sure we've got all this for everybody, but it's obviously got to be commercially viable. I totally appreciate that, but we need to be future proofing, and we do need to do this for our residents, and I think all those things have come out. I think the big thing that's come out tonight, listening to everybody speak, there's been an awful lot of talk. It's been about communication. And I think there's possibility that we may want to be in Scrutiny looking at something on as a work item on how communication with Cabinet and Scrutiny works, possibly. If anybody wants to think about that one. Process was talked about, then the issues about understanding, again in the comms, what is the framework, what is the master plan. So it's all about kind of gauging expectations, gauging understanding, and making sure we've got that good flow of communication going. I think there's generally feeling in the whole room, everybody wants the best for Basingstoke. There's no two ways about it, and everybody here is trying. And I say that for with great respect to the Cabinet and to the officers. It's all being done with the best intentions. And it's a real shame that we are delaying and things have taken so long to get there. And it does seem to be a repeating pattern in all sorts of things. So I hope that kind of sums up, what's the gist of everything that's been said tonight. My understanding, so what we're looking at doing is we're looking to take option, and I've got to I've got. Oh yes, and so but yeah, right. So that's my summing up. So Councillor Tomlin, I'll invite you as the signatory to have your. Whether you are satisfied that your concerns have been adequately considered at the meeting.
Thank you, Chair, and well, thank you all the participants, members and consultants and officers. It's very good to have this meeting. I think we share that, and it was very necessary. I mean, briefly, we're here because, again, a master plan was put to EPH from full council. It went to EPH, they raised concerns and made comments. It came to full council completely unchanged, and full council were not happy with it. Tonight, well, Cabinet obviously approved it. Now here we are at scrutiny because of events, and at last, with some explanations. Okay, I may negatively say a lot of it is about what we can't do, what we can't afford, but at least we're starting to understand. And so that says to me that the master plan or the presentation of it was too early with not enough meat on it. We were looking, I think, we were expecting a proposal, and you know that's what we didn't get, and we're hearing a lot more's coming along. As the chair said, as a council, we might, well, these are my words, but you were alluding to that as a council, we do need to decide whether we want to spend more money on things, whether we actually want to not take the commercial sensitivity and do things for our residents. We want to look at the energy. We want to be costed, evaluated properly. Do we want this to be an eco-leisure park? And there's those sort of things. So I'm a little confused as to what Cabinet actually did approve, given that we've opened up this interesting thing. So I don't really know what's on offer. We're waiting to hear what's happening. I have a better understanding. So in a nutshell, yes, I think you have taken a stage of addressing our concerns, and with your recommendation that it goes to task and finish through whatever route, our concerns are on their way to being alleviated, provided Cabinet accept that and we get on with it and we all chip in and do it that way. So all I can say is, what are we, 80% of the way there? So, you know, I don't know where that leaves us. It'll be 100% when we see the recommendations taken up. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I invite Councillor Isaac as a Cabinet member to make any final comments.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you all councillors. I think it's been an informative debate tonight, and I get the sense that there's been some value that you've taken from this, and information that you weren't aware of is now is there with you. I think there's still a sort of an issue about the concept of a framework master plan, the point about the framework is that it's a mechanism which now enables us to move forward in the selection of leisure operators, and I confirm that it's always been our intention that we would work with councillors, existing operators on the park, residents to ensure that there is a broad level of support for what we're intending to do in what is, as we move into the delivery phase of the new leisure park. What I'm concerned about, though, is that we don't end up having more talking shops and so forth that delay the whole process, because I think our residents won't be happy about that. They've heard enough talk and have had enough consultation. They want action, and that's what that's where I want us to get to as soon as possible, because it has taken too long, and for all sorts of reasons. But so I think that there's still some a difference of view about what the framework should be providing, but let's put that to one side and get on and work together on the delivery.
Thank you. Right, so now we go to make one of the following decisions. So to take no further action or refer the decision back to the decision maker for reconsideration, setting out the nature of the committee's concerns, which I believe is the one we have chosen. Everybody in agreement? Agreed. Okay. And that was, and I think you got, did you get that, Julia? That was obviously.
Sorry, just for Julia's sake, obviously, can we confirm the concerns that are going to be referred back to Cabinet? Thank you. In a nutshell.
Can I suggest we review the YouTube rather than sit here and go through what must be a list of at least 20 or 30 points? I mean, I can sit here and try and list them off, and colleagues can as well across the entire evening, but I mean, there were a lot of concerns expressed this evening, and
I think I'll try and sum up, and if you've got any problem, I was going to say, I think the points I took on were communication, the process, some of the classifications of things like the master plan or the framework. It was about setting expectations. It was about costings. It was about the piecemeal approach. I think they were some of the key things. The need for a vision, yes, opposed to just also being inclusive, a sort of sense that things maybe, and it was obviously not all agreed with, but there was a perception of possibly being a bit disjointed. Also, something that came up very strongly was about health and well-being, talking, looking outside beyond the scope of just the sort of the leisure industry, particular things like all member briefings as well, and that sort of whole thing. The comms and process, I think, were one of the biggest things that came out as to why we are where we are, and that needs to be looked at. And obviously the task and finish group. Okay, I think so. That now leaves me to the delightful final thing on the agenda, which is to close the meeting. Thank you everybody for coming along. Thank you for everyone that's participated.
Well done, Chair.